Welcome to Hispanic Business Success Stories. I'm Homero Galicia. We are fortunate enough to interview successful business owners to learn from them their story. Every business has a story. Today's story is particularly captivating because not only do we have an interesting business story, but we have an interesting family story. We're fortunate to interview Mr. Rudy Telles of Ramon's Transfer. Mr. Telles, thank you so much for being with us. I appreciate
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Taking time. Now, Ramon's Transfer is what kind of a business?
Well, as most people would know, it's a moving business.
Yeah.
We move furniture for businesses, for homes, and every now and then we'll move something strange or different, like the bell we moved for El Paso High recently for their celebration. It's a huge bell, weighs a lot, and so they asked us if we would volunteer our services, and we did. So
great.
we move a little bit of everything.
And but the business is over 100 years old.
Absolutely. It's it's 104 now to be exact, since 1912.
And it was started by your grandfather?
My grandfather started the business, passed on to my father, and now I have it.
Isn't that neat? That's exciting. So let me ask first about your family, then we'll get back and ask about your grandfather a little bit. But your father was Joe I. Telles.
Joe I. Telles, that's right. Jose Ignacio.
Jose Ignacio. And interesting, his brothers were Raymond and
Raymond
Richard.
and Richard, yes.
Were they just the two brothers?
Three brothers. My dad, Raymond, and Richard.
And Raymond was the county commissioner and the school board member. Richard
Was. He was on the school board for many, many years.
Yeah.
And of course, my uncle was first Mexican-American mayor.
Yeah. Raymond
Went on to become ambassador under John F. Kennedy.
Yeah. So it's an illustrious family.
Well, I'm told.
So you had how many brothers and sisters?
I have or had one brother and two sisters. My sisters are still around. My brother passed away about 2 years ago.
Yeah, I went to high school with your brother.
That's
Raymond.
right, you did.
Wonderful guy. I remember him well. I was sad to know that he'd passed. And your sisters, their names?
My older sister is Angie. She married a local attorney named, his name is Jerry Tansey, so she's Angie Tansey now. My other sister's Patricia, and she lives in Albuquerque.
Okay.
And she's a doctor up there.
Wow, fantastic.
Yeah.
So then you come along now. So let me ask about your grandfather first. What year did he start the business?
Well, 1912. 1912. He was actually a bricklayer by trade. But I guess he saw an opening there for a moving company, since El Paso was just getting established in those days. This, new neighborhoods springing up, and of course people have to move, and he was there.
Really, 1912, people were moving there.
Sure. I guess people never stopped moving.
Well, the city, I guess, really started growing after the railroad came in.
Yeah, I would say so, yeah.
And so, but he had other businesses as well?
He had a taxi cab service also that he ran alongside the moving company. And little story behind that is that the phone number that he requested was 1010. And it can be interpreted as saying bueno, bueno, and in Spanish that's good, good. So I hear tell that people would call for a moving service, and they'd ask the operator, they wanted to be connected with good, good.
Really?
So that worked, I guess, for a while.
Yeah, I remember the old phone numbers used to be first 5 numbers, I think, and then they changed to suffixes like Keystone. I was talking to my wife the other day about it.
Yeah, I remember that. And of course, back then it was just 1010, 4 numbers.
Yeah, oh, I see. I remember old phone number when I was we were in the same neighborhood.
That's right.
And so you grew up right across the street from Cathedral
High School. Born there.
You were born there.
My mom still lives there, believe it or not.
And your mom? How old is your mom now?
My mom will be 100 next year. I'm sorry, next month.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, fantastic.
Yeah.
Congrats. And she still lives in that house?
Absolutely. And she's still doing well.
Isn't that fantastic?
Really.
That's great. And so, so your grandfather starts the business because he's an entrepreneur. Gosh, you know, how in the world did he start the business? Did you get to meet your grandfather?
You know, I was just a kid back then. I guess he died in the 50s, and I must have been maybe 10, 12 years old. But yeah, I do remember him. But yeah, he wasn't around too long after I was born.
Stories about him. So your father then takes over. But he was already running before your father?
My dad tells me he was reluctant to take the business because he had other ambitions. And the way I hear it, it was somewhat forced on him, I think. He didn't really want it, but he took it on, and he stuck with it ever since till the day he died.
So he took over the business what years?
Probably, I would say, in the early 1930s.
Really, your father was working with his father?
Sure. Well, no, he didn't work with his father. His father just told him, "Here, I don't want anything to do with it anymore." And
really? Oh, I see.
And that's how it happened.
So he picked it up right then?
Yeah.
Wow. And so your father, did he do that to you?
No, my dad my situation was maybe a little different. When I went to work with him, I had just left a bar. I just gotten out of the bar business, which I had to try out from my past experiences with other friends who own bars, of course, I had to give it a shot. Anyway, but thereafter I went to work with him, and it wasn't planned. It just kind of just happened, you know. And that was back in the 80s. So, and then of course I was just working with him until the day he passed away. Then of course, you know, it was all my responsibility.
But you did other things as well.
Yes, previous to that I was usually a representative for major companies such as the Dr. Pepper Company, Velcro out of California. But that's primarily what I did when I was.
So how many years you do national
Well,
sales?
I was in sales and marketing. I guess ever since I got out of school back in the 60s, did a little stint in the Army, and then after that, I guess I got to working seriously for a living.
So you went in the service right after out of high school?
Pretty much so, yeah.
What Army?
Army, me and Renee Nunez joined in together.
Really?
And we did our basic and our training together, and Vietnam came around and they told us, pack your duffel bags because we're headed out, and we did all that. We got out, formation, and then they tell us, never mind, you're not going after all.
Wow.
So anyway, that was my experience in the Army.
Yeah, so you were part of the Temple Gang. The Temple Gang was called the Temple Gang because they hung around the Mount Sinai Temple.
Right.
Mount Sinai, was it?
That's it.
Because was it Burciaga, Jose Antonio Burciaga's father was the janitor there.
That's right. That's right.
And so all you guys hung around the basement.
That's it.
And that was the Temple Gang.
That was our clubhouse.
I've known about the Temple Gang.
And originally it was just the neighborhood kids. There was about 5 of us that originally were hanging out together in those days. And then of course up now, I mean, there's maybe 100 people that got to be friends with us, and so now it was known as a Temple Gang.
In fact, Judge Briones, was he part of it?
David, David was part of our gang.
And Rene Nunez was state board member for
we got some
state
prominent Temple Gang members.
Yeah, and Jose Antonio Burciaga was a good friend. He was an author and a poet and an artist.
And I don't know if you knew his younger brother, Ephraim.
No.
Yeah, he went to Cathedral, and now he lives in San Antonio.
Okay.
But we all still remain good friends. We all still communicate. We're still around.
So, do you know how old you were when you got into the business?
How old, pardon me?
How old you were when you?
Well, without telling my age, I guess I was back in the 80s. Well, I guess can't help from telling my age. I must have been in my 40s.
Okay, so you already had a lot of experience.
Oh yeah. Plus, growing up as a kid, I was actually out there working with these guys, moving furniture.
Okay.
You know.
You grew up in the business, but it wasn't something you wanted to do.
No, I had no plans, and you know, in those days, I wasn't thinking about what I wanted to do.
What was your father like?
My dad was a very friendly guy, and most people liked him. I have an article. I don't know if I brought it with me, but it had an article of someone that used to work for him that went on to be prominent in some corporation, and he wrote an article in the paper about it, saying how my dad helped him when he was young, and he was one of his mentors, and so he was a good man.
And your mother, what was your mother like?
My mom was a housewife all her life. She raised us and stayed home pretty much of the time. And maybe that's why she's so healthy today. Gonna be 100 years old.
Had to chase you around, right?
She got her exercise.
That's neat. That's neat. And so now, you know, later we'll talk about where the business is going from here on out. But in working with your father, what did you learn from your father?
Well, I learned some work ethic. He worked all day long. He worked till the day he died. I mean, till the day he got sick, he was working, and hard worker. Always looking on what to do next. You know, he was somewhat of an inventor himself. During his bowling days, which he was a champ at one time, El Paso champ in bowler. He even came up with an invention for bowlers, which he marketed, and well, for different reasons, it didn't go well. But he was a very inventive.
What was his invention?
It was called he called it the Joe Eye Sling. It was a rubber band that clasped onto your thumb. It came around your arm, and it helped you to throw a curve.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Wow. He bowled a 300 game.
He bowled the first 300 game at Thunderbird Lanes when it was first new.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, my brother Virgil used to run a Virgilio. He had a bowling show when TV started in El Paso. He had a bowling show, and
really,
I remember watching some of these great bowlers. So I'm sure he knew him.
Of course, he got his start at the White Elephant Bowling Lane.
Yes, the White Elephant. Yeah.
No longer there. Yeah.
That was interesting. In fact, when it was later, we used to go to the White Elephant for lunch. They had a good
restaurant.
Good restaurant in the front.
Yeah, and you could go on to a history about that too. I mean, that lady that started that restaurant there, well, she's all over town now. It's the Malenchi, the Rincon de Cortez, and so
that's where she was. That's right.
But that's where she got started.
I talked to the daughter who runs them now.
Oh yeah.
And that's right. That's where they started, the White Elephant, and no longer around. But those were bowling alleys of 12 lanes. They were small.
Yeah, and you had your pin boys. You know, they would set the pins.
Pin boys.
None of that automatic stuff.
So you grew up working.
Well, yeah, you know, I was always out trying to make some money somehow, you know.
Well, and your brother had his own business too.
Oh yeah, well, my brother, of course, he had a bail bond business for a long time too. I don't know if you remember that, Ramon Telles Bail Bonds.
And it's his son that works with the state.
Raymond Jr. Yeah, now he's the CEO for the
Mobility Authority.
There you go. Yeah, I can never think of that name.
He's your nephew.
And he's my nephew.
And you have a son.
My son's name's Christopher. He lives in Dallas. In the movie industry, he lived in Austin most of the time, but since he went to work as a casting agent for the Dallas series, you remember? Yeah. So he moved to Dallas, and he's been there ever since.
Really?
Doing his own thing.
Wow. And so the business, is he interested in the business?
Well, he's gotten interested, and through my urgings, I must say, I have told him I'd like to slow up and maybe do something other than run a business. But
Well, let me ask you, what were your first challenges when you got into the business and you had to run it? What kind
well,
of
you know, my dad was from the old school, and I tell people often, I said, you know what? I mean, I had to really talk him into going from a rotary phone to a push-button phone. You know, it was that sort of thing where he was used to doing things his own way. and of course, me as a young guy would come up with new ideas, and I see that happening with my son now. You know, he comes up with these ideas, and it's like, well, really, I don't know if I want to do that, but I have to listen to him. I told him I'd keep an open mind, you know, because I know he's got good ideas, and eventually those will be his ideas that he'll be utilizing, and I got to listen to him.
And your father, how did he handle that?
Well, people tell me, oh, I'd argue with your dad because he wanted to do this way and you wanted to do that way. And I said, well, really? I don't recall that. But I guess we must have had our disagreements.
But you stuck with him.
Well, I stuck with him, yeah. And then at the end, when he passed away, well, then there was no choice.
Yeah. And so all of a sudden now the whole business lands on your shoulders. What kinds of challenges did you face?
Well, paying the bills is always a challenge, you know. I attempted to grow the business, and I did to a certain extent. And then I got to thinking, well, you know, these are the sort of things I used to discuss with my dad about growing the business, and he was content with just business as usual. He didn't necessarily want to work any harder, and I understand from a older person's point of view. You know, you don't want to work so hard. You want to take it easy, which is with the point that I'm finally getting to. And so that was really the challenge, is trying to change his mind into doing things differently.
So primarily you move all their furniture from their old home to a new home.
Sure. And I get a lot of business from home builders too, you know, that always constantly moving people, moving their model homes around. I decided one day that I was going to go interstate, which means the whole country. And I did try that for a while, and I started taking on the thinking like my dad was, and I'm thinking, well, do I really want that? It's, you know, more headaches, more output, more insurance. You know, you can go on and on and on. And so I figured the local and regional business is enough, and that's what I focus on now.
Well, El Paso's been growing constantly.
Absolutely.
And you can attest to that.
Sure. My dad rarely ever did any advertising. Consequently, I don't do much myself either. We rely mainly on our old customers, that when they call, they would always say, wow, you're still there. So it's mainly repeat business that we do, I must say.
Wow. And so you have moving trucks and...
Sure, we have a fleet of trucks. That's another challenge, trying to maintain them, keep them running. And there's always something.
And you've had long-term employees?
Absolutely. I've had employees that I've known since I was a kid. Of course, those aren't there anymore. Yeah. I've had a lot of people passed away there. Their kids and their family continued working with us.
Really?
I still have couple of people there that were from an old family that was with us. And those are my dinosaurs, I call them, that are still with us.
But they're loyal employees?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Good workers.
So there's enough activity for you to be pretty busy.
Yes, yeah. I try not to be too busy, you know. But sure. There's always something to contend with.
But they're always moving. So when you wanted to expand or grow the business, before you thought about going nationwide, how did you grow the business? What?
Well, of course, you know, I started doing some advertising, and then the internet came along, and of course we've got a website now, and those are mainly the ways I would advertise it.
And you'd see increase in business?
There was some. but then, like I said, along comes other problems, you know, when you expand. And for that reason, I just decided, well, you know, I think I'll just stick with the local and regional. And when I say regional, I mean, you know, one-day trips, like maybe to Ruidoso, to Las Cruces, things where you can do a move in one day and come back without having to stay overnight.
Okay, okay. And how many employees do you have now?
Well, right now we're using five drivers, and of course the helpers turn out 10 or 15 helpers that are not necessarily regular, but you can usually count on them and being there for any extra work that we might have.
Well, so you're pretty busy. You've got an active business.
Oh yeah, yeah. We've always got something to do.
You're always moving.
If it's not the business, it's me. I always need something to do. You know.
So as you got into the business and began to work it, even though you've had the sales experience and all of that, was it fun?
Was this business fun? Yeah. Fun. I don't know if I can say fun, but it's always been interesting. I mean, I have never lost interest in it, and I just try and maintain it and keep my customers happy at this day and age.
How do you keep customers happy?
Well, of course, you know, good service always works. You know, and I should have brought letters from people that have said, you know, that how good your workers did a good job, and so these are the kind of things I like to hear.
Well, tell me, what is good service when you're moving to somebody's home? I mean, that's
well,
precious cargo.
Of course, you know, you always got to worry about scratches. You got to worry about damaging furniture, which I must say, I mean, it does happen occasionally, and but for the most part, we're very good. We're professional. We've been doing this a long time, so all our workers know how to handle furniture. And if they don't, we give them a quick lesson.
You've had to move grand pianos?
Oh, yes. All types of pianos. Baby grands, uprights, spinets, consoles.
Down the stairs? And
oh, yeah. Yeah, stairs. Every obstacle you can think of.
Really?
So,
and it's just manpower?
Mostly manpower. We have our dollies and hand trucks and that sort of thing. But, yeah, you mostly got to rely on manpower.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. If somebody says, you know, I don't want to move anything, but I have to move, and so they call you, you come in and you box everything, package everything.
Actually, you know, we're not packers.
Okay.
Our customers do their own packing, but we handle everything else.
Okay, okay.
And of course, there's some people that insist on packing, and we don't get their business, but most people rather prefer packing themselves anyway, so
yeah.
It works.
So they know where everything goes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's kind of neat. So what opportunities do you see now for your business?
Well, you know, I'm not really necessarily looking for any new opportunities. If we can maintain our old customers, and of course, I will never turn down new customers, but just it's a matter of maintaining our business and keeping the people that we do have on board. But yeah,
you must have a good sized database of all your customers.
Well, I can't say I know them all, but there are a few that are regular that I can.
Well, let me ask about your particular skills. You know, that you bring to the business, different than what your father had. What are those skills?
Well, the skills I think I bring is the marketing and sales. My dad was from the old school, and his how can I say it? He was not as easygoing with customers as I think I am. You know, you get into a business where you do the same thing over and over every day, and some people will tend to just be robotic and, you know, answer your questions and forget about all the innuendos you might want to add. I think I'm a little better than that. Not to say my dad didn't do a good job, but I think that maybe that's where I focus on more so.
So is it fair to say that the next generation takes the business to another level?
Well, that'll all be up to my son.
Yeah.
You know, of course, once he runs it, well, then he can do whatever he wants. If he wants to keep growing it, that's fine with me.
But you took your father's business to the next level.
I did. And like I said, I kept going, but then I kind of kicked back, deciding, well, I don't need to work all that much harder.
You know, when you pass on a business from father to son, what was that like for you? I mean, of course, you'd already been working there.
Mm-hmm.
So when your father passed, because he worked up until he passed, right?
Sure.
So was that, when he handed it over like that to you, was it a big shock, a big change?
Well, no, but like I said, I'd been there, so I knew the business well, and so it wasn't really a challenge for me to take it over. I knew what had to be done, and so I'm well acquainted, so I wasn't concerned about that.
And you guys were all well established with the community?
Sure, being there so long.
And you were well known?
I would imagine so, after 100 years.
Yeah, well, now the 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
But when you came in, you had a challenge to keep it going.
Sure.
And it's, how do you describe the business compared to, I guess newer business today? I mean, you have a different kind of service.
Well, it's been a family business forever, and so and I know there's been other moving companies that have tried to establish themselves, and I've seen them come and go. Starting a new business like that, I'm not sure what it would be like because there's so much competition out there. So a business like mine that's been here for so long, I would think it'd be hard to compete with. For all the longevity that we've been here, it just works in our favor.
So there's a huge value to the longevity of a business for
Sure.
For your customer, for your repeat customer, for your name.
And we started doing a survey here a while back, and to see where our business was originating from. Sure. And I labeled it as yellow pages, internet, word of mouth, or did they get our number from one of our trucks? And the majority of our business is coming from repeat customers.
Fantastic.
This is what I came to find out.
Wow.
Which speaks to the time we've been in this business.
Yeah. So it weighs a lot.
Sure.
Weighs a lot. Well, this story is fascinating. Now, your father's name was
Joe, or Jose Ignacio Telles.
So he was Joe I. Telles.
Joe. People refer to him as Joe I. Telles.
So why is Ramon's transfer named Ramon's transfer?
Well, my grandfather was Ramon.
Okay.
My grandfather.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you have uncles who is Ramon also, Raymond?
Well, that's right. One of my uncles was Raymond, and the other one was Richard, and they were all brothers.
So Joe, Raymond, and Richard were
Right.
brothers, and Raymond, your uncle Raymond, was the first Hispanic mayor of El Paso.
Correct.
And Richard was a school board member for years and a
also county
commissioner.
Mm-hmm.
And some people call him the Godfather, right?
Godfather of South El Paso.
Yeah. He had a lot of businesses and
He did. He was
properties.
He was yes. He had a lot of businesses.
So was your father different than his brothers?
Yeah, I would say so. How different? I can't really say right offhand how different he was, but they were all different. They all had different personalities.
And so, but your father also had political interests.
He did, and I suppose because of his brothers, he also got influence in the politics. And back in the 80s, he also ran for county tax assessor.
Okay. And but he knew He knew the political atmosphere, and
Oh yeah, yeah. He was very much influenced by it, especially having brothers in the politics.
but Ramon's transfer has been a name in moving, right?
Well, yeah. I would think so.
What-
You know.
So your primary customer is who?
Well, actually, I got to say it's probably the older generation since we've been around so long. You know, we hear a lot of older people that still remember us, and that would probably be the bulk of our customers.
And when they're moving houses, you move their home, or
Well, sure, move their homes, their offices. They need us pianos, whatever they don't want to handle themselves.
do you have a fleet of trucks?
Absolutely.
And
We have a
crews.
fleet of trucks that we try and maintain, which is another challenge because, you know, there's always something going wrong. It's always something.
And you cover the El Paso. and
El
Outland.
Paso, I like to say the regional area, which as far as Las Cruces, Ruidoso, Carlsbad, any day trip that we can do without having to stay overnight.
Let me ask you a question different, because you know, as we were sharing, I went to high school with your brother Ramon, who's since passed away a couple of years ago, and you know, he was a wonderful guy. I liked him, easygoing. He was a good pal. How different are you than your brother Raymond?
Well, Raymond was more of a analytical guy. He was good with numbers, and he always seemed to have some kind of business going. Myself, I was not necessarily, never good in math, so my talents, I guess, lie elsewhere. I'm not sure what they are.
Well, you were telling me you were in sales for 10 years.
Yeah, well, I did that most of the time when I was working. I was in sales.
And you enjoyed that.
Outside sales, sure, yeah.
So you're telling me you started a bar. Why'd you start a bar?
Well, after my divorce, I moved to California where friends of mine had a successful club. And they hired me as their doorman while I was there looking for a real job. So I got influenced with that business, and I thought, well, one day I'm gonna maybe try it. And after my working days in California, when I was back in El Paso, I thought, well, here's a good time, here's a good chance. And an old restaurant that had been around for years was called the Black Lion Steakhouse. Very popular place. It closed. I saw the place and I thought, well, that was perfect. That's perfect for what I want. It was during the urban cowboy days with John Travolta and all that. So I gave it a shot, had it for a few years, but you know, as all things come to an end. And then that's when I went to work with my dad.
When you went to California, was that with a bunch of El Pasoans that had moved out there?
Well,
and started?
yeah, I must say, we were all still out there, a bunch of friends of mine. And,
Yeah, a lot of your group went out there and started businesses.
that's it.
Roger
And there's still a
Quiñones.
lot of people out there
Yeah.
that they've moved and never came back.
Yeah,
But we all managed to stay in touch.
yeah. That's kind of that high school group stayed.
Yeah, people are amazed. They say, "Wow, you guys still get together after all these years?" I said, "Yeah."
So you had an entrepreneurial spirit. Was that something that you inherited or you learned about, or?
Since I was a kid, I was always looking for some way to earn money. Whether it was selling Christmas cards or I don't recall having a lemonade stand, but it was along them lines.
Really?
Always trying to do something to earn a buck.
Because your father was always doing something.
Oh yeah, you couldn't stop it. I mean, well, that's what probably just kept him going.
What was he like, your father?
Friendly guy. Everybody liked him that I knew. My friends still remember him. He always used to have sodas in the house. My friends would always come up and drink all our sodas.
Okay.
They remember him for that. And so, yeah, he was like.
You say he's a hard worker. Would he get in and move furniture too?
Well, I don't recall him ever doing that. Of course, I'm sure he probably did it when he was younger. Once I was old enough to know better, I guess. I don't recall him ever doing that, actually.
He ran the business.
He ran the business.
And that's what you do now.
That's what I do now, yeah.
You don't get out there and do the
No, not anymore.
heavy lifting.
I must say I have a couple of times been over to customers' homes where my helpers were working, and I got in there and I pitched in. So my customer got a good deal that day. He got an extra hand.
So what is it for you to run your business? I mean, your business is established. When you took it over from your father, it was established.
Mm-hmm.
But yet you made some changes.
Yeah.
So what were some of the first changes you
Well,
did?
like I said, I had to upgrade the phone system, for one.
Okay.
The internet would just come into play. Got a web page now, website. And then we also transitioned from gas trucks to diesel trucks.
Oh, why?
Well, you know, diesel trucks are last longer, less maintenance. My dad always had gas trucks because he was a mechanic in his younger days, and so he would get out there and work on his own trucks, as long as they were gas, because that's what he knew how to work on. He'd never bought diesels, but that wasn't what he knew. But since I don't work on either one, to me it didn't make a difference.
Yeah.
So now I'm buying diesel trucks.
Do you if you had any you had good relationship with banks? Do you have to use banks? Do you?
Luckily, I've never had to use a bank, and I don't plan to. Luckily, we've been solvent. We haven't needed any loans.
Really?
And that's why I understand small businesses have a challenge, because trying to get loans to increase their business or whatever. But I've never run up against that situation.
So how have you maintained that?
Well, I suppose I reinvest into the business.
Tell me about that. What is
Well, you know, with the income the business brings in, reinvestment also has to do with keeping our trucks running, which is a major expense.
So the vehicles, your logistics is a big cost.
Oh yeah, yeah. I would say the truck maintenance and salaries or wages are our biggest expense.
So you by reinvesting you purchase your own vehicles.
Yes, and we like to purchase them outright without.
Really?
I don't like debt.
Where'd you learn that from?
I think it's just me and my insecurity. Always afraid to owe money to anybody, and that's the way I've always been.
Are you a saver?
I try to be. Can't say I've had much luck, but.
So did you introduce some efficiencies too in the business?
Yeah, I would say I have. Getting better equipment, utilizing other moving methods that are safer.
Like what?
Well, there's different moving vehicles now that are, you know, moving for specialized furniture, dollies, hand trucks, this sort of thing, that I've purchased along the way that better able to handle furniture safer.
So it's not just the standard dolly. You have all kinds of specialized dollies.
Yeah, especially you want to be safe with
Right.
pianos, especially.
How do you lift them up to the truck from a ground level?
Well, we use lift gates. All our trucks have lift gates, hydraulic lift gates.
Okay.
Which in the past that we didn't used to.
Wow.
And it was a matter of manpower then. So these lift gates are a big help.
Sure. So what is your key job in maintaining your business?
My key job is answering the phone, taking orders, and like I said, keeping those trucks running.
Well, but that's customers calling.
Sure. Yeah, if I don't pick up the phone, usually one of my employees will.
Mm-hmm. So you're front line. I mean, people call, they talk to you.
Oh yeah. I'm not the only one picking up the phone, but I would say I pick it up half the time.
Your location is where?
We're on Wyoming Street, we've had other locations throughout the history. Originally, it was in South El Paso. I brought a picture. I guess we don't have it before us, but there was one of the locations was on the corner of Stanton and Wyoming, which now West Star Bank is located.
Okay.
And which is right adjacent to the freeway. But that was like in the 50s, and since then we had two other different locations. And since now we're in Wyoming, we're still in Wyoming, with a different block.
So as you're growing the business as a kid, your father's running the business. You go in, you help out. Did you have a real dream of running the business?
Not at all. Not at all. I wasn't even thinking about that back in those days. You know, when you're that young, you're not usually thinking about things like that. Still in school, and you know, you're with your friends, and you got other ideas. Yeah. So, no, to answer your question, no idea. I wasn't even thinking about ever taking over the business.
So, how many years have you been running the business now?
Well, since my dad passed away in '99.
Okay, so you've
That's
been
in 1999.
17 years.
Thereabouts, yeah.
You like it?
Sure. Oh, yeah. It's a good living.
What do you like about it?
Well, I like that since the business is so old and established, that I don't really necessarily have to go out there and knock on doors anymore. And as I mentioned, most of this is repeat business. It's not like we have to be out there advertising for new business. So possibly the fact that I don't have to be there at 8 o'clock.
So what are the challenges that come with a business that's pretty well established and operating on its own? I mean,
the challenges are maintaining it. Like I said, trucks are the biggest concern right now. You want to keep them running all the time. And I must say, that's probably my biggest concern.
Really?
Some of these trucks are old, some are new, and so we're always having to turn over. And
do you ever take vacation?
My vacations consist of long weekends. I can never. That's my biggest problem, probably, because I can't get away for too long. A week, if I'm gone a week, that's too long for me, because then there's things that you got to be here for. You can't run your business from a long distance.
So what is it to run a business?
It's being able to know what's going on constantly. All my drivers have phones. I stress to them that the reason I help pay for your phone is because you need to tell me where you're at, what you're doing, what's going on. And if not, well, then there's no use having a phone, because I need to know exactly what's going on at every hour of the day.
Really?
And so I feel like a conductor sometimes, because I'm having to schedule calls, dispatch trucks, and that sort of thing. It's always like conducting. That's the way I look at it.
And you enjoy that?
I enjoy it. Yeah, that's my challenge. Yeah.
But you're there. You're constant.
Yeah, and I do like challenges.
What's the culture of your business?
Well, most of my employees are Spanish speaking. That's not to say they don't speak English, but mostly come from Mexican American families. There's a couple of my employees that live in Juarez that actually come every morning. They show up for work, and it's been mostly homegrown people that have worked for the company. I can't recall anybody that we hired that was from elsewhere.
Yeah. Have you ever had to transfer furniture from Juarez to El Paso to Juarez?
People ask me all the time whether we do, and I say no. Mainly because it's too much red tape, going over and across the bridges, and quite frankly, I do not have much faith in doing business in Juarez, because I'm not accustomed to their rules and regulations, and so therefore, no, we never do go into Juarez.
Yeah. Interesting, even though we grew up here and you grew up, what,
Mhm.
2.5 miles from the bridge, from the border,
Yeah.
we don't know the Mexican system and the way they operate.
Yeah, right.
That's interesting.
Uh-huh.
And but let me ask you. Let me divert a little bit and ask about your famous uncles, Raymond. I know him. I actually used to visit with him in Washington
Mm-hmm.
when he was head of EEOC,
OCU.
and that was after he was mayor
Mm-hmm.
and after he was ambassador.
Right.
He came back to Washington.
Right.
And what was he like?
Well, Uncle Raymond was a real easygoing guy. I never heard him ever raise his voice. You know, he worked under 4 different presidents, starting with JFK and
Yeah.
on through Nixon and Ford.
Okay.
But as far as I never really got to know him really we're never really that close. Because I didn't see him that often growing up. We would occasionally visit them, and he would drop by the house. But I can't say that we were close. In his older age, I think probably I got closer to him than when I was younger.
You were telling me you had a chance to visit him before he passed.
I did. I went to visit him in California about a year before he passed away.
Yeah, he lived many years.
He was in his 90s.
Yeah.
Late 90s.
Yeah, I remember. Wow.
Mm.
And your uncle Richard was different.
Another personality. He was probably, well, how can I say? Probably had more personality, I suppose you could say. He was a fun guy to talk to. Always had stories. You know, he was pretty much responsible in getting my uncle elected mayor when he ran.
Yeah.
He was very proactive in the campaigning, and he was a very smart campaigner, even for his races.
He always was. I remember going to his office on Myrtle. He had a business. He had apartments. He had.
Oh yeah, he had a slew of apartments. He was a landlord. Plus, he had a what was it? It was a vending machine company. That's
business,
right.
yeah.
That's right. He had that for a long time.
And a couple of bars, I guess.
Oh, he had bars everywhere too.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. And that's how he would campaign too, because he had all these establishments.
That's right. That's
and
right.
customers.
Oh yeah.
But no, I remember visiting with him one time, talking about a school board election, because he was on the school board, EPISD board for
Right.
years, and he knew the election. He predicted the outcome before. He had it down pretty good. I
Yeah.
remember that,
Uh-huh.
and I know too that he insisted this one last bond issue that Aoe School be rebuilt, and that they were going to rebuild Alamo. He insisted on that. They didn't. They decided to build Hart School up. But he was very insistent on certain kinds of
Right.
things.
Sure. Yeah.
And so your father was a little different in personality.
Yeah. My dad was not the political type up until at the time he actually ran for office. But yeah, I never understood why he decided to do that. I guess he just felt influence from his brothers, but he wasn't as successful in that as they were.
So tell me, do you get more characteristics from your father or from your mother?
I had someone just tell me that I looked like my dad this morning. So as far as looks, I suppose I have more his looks than hers, but.
And personality?
Gee, that's hard to say. Someone would have to tell me. I'm not sure whose personality I picked up.
Was your father driven?
He was driven, probably like I am, as far as challenging keeping the business going and maintaining it and making sure everything was running right.
And so now you're preparing your son?
Now we're preparing my son. He's still living in Dallas and coming in more often these days so that he can learn the ropes. Hopefully, maybe sooner than later, he'll be here running it full time. Right now, he's just getting to know it. He hasn't spent as much time as I have, like when my dad was around. I mean, he's not here with me working, you know, like I was with my dad. So he's got more to learn than I do, or did.
Is that going to be an issue?
I don't think so. He's a pretty smart kid. He picks it up right away. Plus, he's, like I said, he's got ideas of his own.
Yeah. Is there such a thing as being in the blood, running your business?
Oh, I don't know. I know he in his life right now, he's more involved in music and the movie industry and entertainment business and that sort of thing. I think that's in his blood. So it's going to be interesting to see him trying to acquire this different setting, different business for him. But he is interested, and he knows that sooner or later he's going to be running it.
Yeah. So what are the industry challenges that you face in moving?
Well, you know, there's so much competition now that we have to stay in the picture. And when I tell you that I don't do any advertising, sometimes I get second thoughts because occasionally I'm thinking maybe we should, because there's a lot of competition out there, and there's companies that come and go, but then there's other companies that have made it in town, and so it's like any other business. You know, if you don't keep it up, you're going to fall behind.
But you know sales.
I know sales, and it's not like I don't do cold calls anymore. But my sales is mainly on the phone, and we do depend a lot on our trucks. They're actually billboards, moving billboards all over town. People see them, and that's a form of advertising.
Ramon's transfer.
Sure,
Yeah.
right.
That's neat. So your job is to maintain the brand.
That's it, pretty much, mainly so. That's it.
But you have found satisfaction and fulfillment from that.
Sure, sure. It's provided a good living for me, provided a living for all my employees. And so there's people making a living on this business, and for 100 years it has fed many families.
That's a lot of responsibility.
Sure.
And so do you have transition plans for your son, or you just?
Well, the transition plans are going about now. He eventually will move to El Paso permanently, and like I said, right now he's just making frequent trips and spending time in the office, and we're trying to get him trained and moving.
Well, that's exciting. That's exciting for your family legacy. So so we might see Ramon's transfer for another.
Well, and then that's another thing. I'm not a grandfather, so and he has no kids. So after he's not around, I have no idea what's going to happen. Of course, it'll be up to him to do whatever he wants to do with the business. But I can see a day where perhaps it may not be in the family anymore.
Let me ask you, there's no guarantee a business survives. And you don't have that guarantee, even though your father built it and his father built it. There's no guarantee it's going to be here tomorrow.
Sure, no.
So you have to make sure that it's still here.
Keep that name out there. Yeah, keep the name out there.
And keep it going. And
sure.
And but you know everything that's going on.
Absolutely, need to. If I don't know what's going on, then you know, I shouldn't be running it, you know. And
but you've grown through running the business.
well, yeah, since I was a kid and hanging around there and knowing all the people that have ever worked there. I mean, I guess it's a part of me now.
Yeah. So you're a team. Your whole crew and all that's part of your little.
And I like to say we're a family too.
Yeah.
People that work down there and have worked for years and years, they even come back. People that have retired, they'll come back and visit, and just to speak with me and other employees they know. And so we have that sort of thing going on.
Well, we've certainly enjoyed learning about Ramon's transfer from Mr. Rudy Telles. I really appreciate your taking time, and especially knowing that you grew up in the neighborhood across the street from Cathedral High.
Oh yeah,
And that
still
your mother still lives in that house?
still there.
And that's where you were born and grew up?
That's right. That's right. My sister and I were both born there.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Not at the hospital, in the house?
In the house. In the house.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, even though we're 2 blocks away from Hotel to U Hospital.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's been a thrill to learn the story of not only Ramon's transfer, but the Telles family. Especially your uncle being the first Hispanic mayor, and your other uncle Richard being the county commissioner and school board member for so many years and serving this community. So your family has served the community, and your business has served the community. And we really appreciate your story, and thank you so much for sharing.
Well, my pleasure. I'm enjoyed being here.
I'm delighted, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Homer.
And have a good day. Appreciate your watching today. Hope to see you again soon. Thank you.